And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Yes, there is lots and lots to talk about. Joe Biden now leads Pennsylvania by more than 21,000 votes. I said from the beginning I thought it was going to be a win of about 100,000 votes. We're looking there. We're looking there. There are still, I guess, like 150,000 votes to be counted. And Biden's getting about 70% of the mail-in vote, which is, what would you expected? I mean, when you didn't need a crystal ball, you didn't need to be clairvoyant, you didn't even need to be really particularly smart. You knew that's how this was going to play out because of how each side said they were going to cast their ballots. Now, what we're seeing, and again, not very difficult to figure out, the collective whine from the right wing, from the Republicans, palpable. Some people find the whining not enjoyable, not satisfying. Personally, I'm not a big whiner fan. Kind of enjoyed it today. I gotta be honest. Kind of enjoyed listening to the far right, lose their collective minds about how they're being cheated. And look, this is a problem because they're saying these things without any proof, and what they have come forth with already debunked. And this is maybe a great moment for our country. Because maybe in the past, some of these right-wing hackery groups who, we got a whistleblower who, he saw something, or we've got this video that we doctored up really well. And then people would lose their minds. We're maybe now taking a step back before we react and going, sounds like BS. It's that, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck thing. Well, there's the duck. Good news coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court. NBC News earlier, just minutes ago, reported that the Supreme Court has issued an order for, here in Pennsylvania, that Donnie not going to be happy. Donnie don't happy, as my daughter would have said when she was a child. Samuel Alito, Philadelphia's, not so favorite son, he has upheld what the Supreme Court ruled, and that is that the ballots that were received after Tuesday's election day, but still postmarked the proper day, will be segregated, and they are to be counted. Didn't stop the counting. That's huge. That, to me, this is the moment that I was waiting to see where we were going to go. And, I give Samuel Alito credit for virtually nothing because I think he's a horrible Supreme Court justice. But in this moment, the blind squirrel found the nut. Count every vote. Now, I'm not saying that tomorrow they may not change their mind and go, okay, you counted them, now we're going to chuck them all out. But the counting continues, and this is the important part. Because once they were to shut things down, once the motor is shut down, once the machine is idle, it's hard to get that thing ramped back up. And then that's when all of the craziness and the shenanigans and all those. So this is good news, and good on them. Now, some of the experts are predicting that once all of the ballots are counted, and if you look at the map, they're saying 306 to 323, pretty sizable win. But that means you got to take Georgia. You got to keep Pennsylvania. I think is already in the win column. You got to get Nevada. You got to get Arizona. I think that's very doable, very very much doable. Now, personally, I would love to be a fly on the wall of the White House right now. I would love to see the meltdown, the temper tantrum, all of that. Because, and again, you don't need to be clairvoyant or particularly smart to know that what's being reported is Donald Trump is not going, he's telling people around him he is not going to concede. He is going to go down. Now, Larry Kudlow says there's going to be a peaceful transfer of power, which means that he's not going to stake his last stand. This won't be his last stand. What it means is he's going to probably be back, and he's going to continually be a thorn in our side. But it's not surprising to me that the behavior we've seen for the last 4 years is something that he's going to take and make a huge part of his legacy. And I think most of the Republicans, and you're seeing this as people are kind of shying away. And we talked about this yesterday. They're kind of turning away at this point, except the absolute loyalists like Rudy Giuliani or Newt Gingrich, because Gingrich was out doing his spiel today saying, we need federal agents to arrest those poll workers, because the poll workers, he claimed, weren't close enough. The observers, the poll watchers weren't close enough to the poll workers. And if you remember, like I do, 2000, where the poll watchers were literally over the shoulder, breathing down the neck of the person counting the ballot. They were, literally cheek to cheek while people are counting. Now, here's the thing. We got this little COVID thing going on. I don't want anybody breathing on me. Mask or no mask, I don't want you near me. There is a camera that I've been watching, because I've been watching the count from Philadelphia. There's a camera in the room, and you can watch the room. We can argue whether it's far enough or close enough. We can argue all of that. But, this whole idea that the whole thing's corrupt, the Philadelphia machine is corrupt, Newton said. Oh, Newty. As is the Atlanta machine, they're corrupt, and the Detroit machine is corrupt, and virtually anyone that didn't vote for Trump, I'm assuming, is corrupt. That's going to be their line. And at this moment, as far as I know, and this is where, you keep throwing this stuff out there. All these people are corrupt, every one of them. There's no one who's been arrested. There's no allegations of any corruption that we can substantiate. Lots of innuendo, lots of allegation, lots of I've heard. Lots of anecdotal. I heard, someone told me. And like I said, I'm kind of enjoying the collective whine. Now, it's not going to go away anytime soon, I don't think, because the RNC is throwing out the call for money, as they always do. We need $60 million to fund the legal challenges. We can do this. And, Georgia's going to have to go through a recount. So they're gonna scrutinize every single ballot. And here's the thing. I am 110% in favor of that. I'm 110% in favor of making sure that every ballot is counted. Now, where we're going to have a problem is when you have a legal system that works very slowly and deliberately, as it should, where every single one of those ballots could turn into a lawsuit, which is why they need $60 million. It's quite amazing to me, but it is exactly what it is. And look, I'm not the only one who says, I don't want fraud in our system. I don't want to have a system where there's chaos. And this is where, both sides are guilty of this at times, where I don't believe it. Once we don't believe the results of our ballot box, this whole experiment of self-rule, this whole democracy thing that we're trying to do, done. If the voice of the people can't be respected at the ballot box, it's over. And I don't know where you go from there, but it's not good. Now, it's interesting that I'm not the only one who's saying, look, there's no proof out there. You can throw all the allegations out there. And this is one of those rabbit hole alert moments, because we're going down. Because I can't believe that I'm actually going to cite Alberto Gonzalez as someone you should maybe just this once listen to. Mr. Sign the torture thing. Bush era Attorney General Alberto Gonzalez, he has come out and said that if you got proof, bring it forward. That Trump lawyers who are claiming all of this fraud, you should back it up with some proof. And this is one of those periods where you go, I can't believe I'm agreeing with the Bush administration. And I think someone said it yesterday where, you look back at the Bush administration and say, wow, Those were the good old days. Just crazy. Now, we've had our craziness today. Evidently, there was a bomb threat in Philadelphia at the convention center that police, I guess, are investigating. And I hope they find whoever did it. Honestly, truthfully, I hope they find them and bring them to absolute, complete, and total justice in public. That we make sure that this stuff doesn't ever happen again. Now, here we are. Election day, we're moving, election day's over, numbers are finally coming to an end, and I said Saturday would be the day that all of the counting would probably be done. I think Pennsylvania is talking about moving into Monday possibly, because there are so many ballots still. But here we are, after the big election period, we had, super spreader commander-in-chief running around and having his big rallies. Well, guess what? We have set yet another record. Over 121,000 new cases. And again, it's going to get worse tomorrow. We've registered more than 1,000 daily deaths for the third day in a row. We're almost to 235,000 total deaths. Got 9.6 million people infected as of this afternoon. And it's not going to get much better. And this is the legacy that Donald Trump is going to have. And, it brings me to this moment of right now, we as a country, and look, I'm done beating up on the Trump supporters. I'm done gloating. It's now time to get to work. The difference between 2016 and 2020, I'm really hoping, and I know this is going to be the case, is that in 2016, we were just as divided as we are now. We were a divided nation, and we had someone who went into the White House to divide us even further. And look, his shortcomings we all knew. He was a one-trick pony. That's the only it's the only club he had in the bag, so to speak, to use a golf analogy. I'm hoping Joe Biden will be the guy, whether we like it or not, who's going to seek out and find common ground where it's possible. I believe Joe Biden is an old school politician who believes politics is the art of the possible. So he's going to try and do the horse trading. He's not an ideologue. I know the right tried to paint him as this, this super socialist and this hyper liberal and all this stuff. No, Joe Biden is an old school horse trader. He's a guy who you get things done. You may not like a lot of the things, but he wants to move forward. And you go back to, he got beat up over the crime bill, and we look in the rear view mirror and go, oh, it's terrible, it's terrible. Well, it's what people were calling for at the time. So we're in this moment where we need a collective calm, and then move forward. Because look, this virus thing, it's real. We're now past the election, and all those people who told me that it's a hoax, it's going to go away right after the election. You'll see. You'll see. Once it's over, once the election's over, it's going to just go away. And yet we're finding out that it's peaking every day. And tomorrow will probably be another peak and another. So what needs to happen is we need to come around the idea of coming together. Now, understand, unity in this country, the idea that you can't divide the working class, and this is where, I said, the other day when I walked out onto the picket line at this Navistar place just down the road from here, I said, I don't care who these people voted for. I don't care who they voted for at all. I don't care who anybody on a picket line voted for. If you're fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, if you're fighting the good fight, if you're fighting the battle that needs to be fought against the big money and the corporate power, I am going to be there with you. And of course, you got the normal arrows slung at me, but that's where my mindset is. My mindset is we've got to fight the good fights first. We've got to win those ones first. And because understand, who wins in this divided government? Because Wall Street is thrilled that we're going to have Joe Biden in the White House and we're going to have a Democratic Congress and a Republican Senate, because they know they're safe. No one's coming after them. No one is coming after Wall Street. And with the pandemic because unemployment fell a little bit today. I guess they're saying a full percentage down to 6.9%. But, we still have a shortage of about 10 million jobs from the pre-COVID era. But long-term unemployment is, still way out of whack. Long-term unemployment is defined by people who are out of work more than 6 months. It rose last week by 1.2 million to 3.6 million people. That is not good. And anybody who knows, if you've ever been unemployed, the longer you're unemployed, the harder it gets to find a job. That's why they say if you don't have a job, quick, take anything and then look for something else. But we're in this moment where we can't get a stimulus package. You got the Fed chair who's saying, look, we desperately, desperately need a stimulus. And for all those people saying, say the jobs are coming back. No, well, some of the jobs may be coming back, but the economy is not good. It's not healthy. It's not good. And the reality is, until we bring this virus under control, you're not going to be able to put the pedal to the metal. You're not going to be able to swing the doors open. You're not going to be able to jam all the gears of the economy because, well, we're still going to be dying. And this is the part that, again, had Donald Trump, and I've said this for a while, had Trump taken this virus seriously, because on his tombstone, here lies a guy who didn't take the thing seriously and lost because of it. Had he taken the virus seriously back in January and come out and said, "Hey, we got real problems. We got to come together as a nation, and we got to do this right now. You super patriots, join me." And boy, you'd have had those militia people, instead of banging on the doors in Michigan, screaming, "We want our freedom," they'd have been out in the streets going, "Put on that damn mask." Because dear leader told them. It's a hoax. It's going to go away after the election. And here we are. Here we are in trouble. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day workers at International Harvester went out on strike. At the time, it was the UAW's longest strike. 35,000 UAW members at 21 plants in 8 states downed their tools. For 172 days, Harvester workers walked the picket lines over seniority rights and forced overtime. They had long resisted mandatory overtime rules. Workers at Harvester were the only UAW members anywhere who still enjoyed the 8-hour day, 5-day work week. They had no intention of giving that up, especially in the industrial downturn of the period that threw over 100,000 auto workers out of their jobs. Harvester argued the company had lost $1.3 billion in recent years because of work rules. The company hoped to force a concessionary contract. But 6 weeks into the strike, the company announced a 98% increase in profits for the year. 3 months into the strike, Harvester hinted it would drop its demand for forced overtime in exchange for part-time hires that would be non-union. The company also hoped to do away with seniority rights in job bidding. Despite injunctions that limited picket lines, strikers were able to minimize scabbing and shipments in and out of many plants. At a plant just outside Chicago, striking Local 6 members marched outside company offices with a burning effigy of hated Harvester president Archie McCardle, chanting "No forced overtime." Victory finally came in April. Harvester workers stood tough for months against company attacks in a period of massive plant and mill closures across the country. They secured seniority rights in job bidding and beat back attacks against mandatory overtime. As for McCardle, brought in to slash and burn the union workforce, he was fired.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, again, you got to count every vote. And as I said from the beginning, the only way you're going to see Trump pull ahead is if they stop the counting, is if they somehow stop the ballots from being counted. That's just one of those amazing things that, I can't believe we have to say. I can't believe we have to say that we want every ballot counted. That, we're just, I guess, the really frustrating part of this is you keep coming back to every vote should count. Every person should be able to vote. It's not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. But like I said, as long as they can keep us divided, as long as they can pit us against each other, they are going to most certainly, prevail. And here to share some thoughts on where we are at this moment, the guy who's been raising the bells, sounding the alarms, screaming from the mountaintop about the only way Trump's going to win is if he steals it, is the guy who literally wrote the book, How Trump is Going to Steal 2020. I've asked our investigative reporter, Greg Palast, to come back and share some thoughts. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Okay, remember it was a warning, not a prediction, but it's getting pretty scary close to a prediction. I just want to make sure that the voters pick the president this time. Wouldn't that be refreshing?
It most certainly would be, and it would be, as I said the other day, if we lived in this utopian world where everyone got the vote and every vote counted, and it was a situation where we didn't have to pick a Tuesday and stand in line for 13 hours, that would be great too.
Yeah. Well, we have something we have a good imitation of a democracy. It's just I'd just like to try the real thing once.
There you go. But here's the thing.
Yes,
here's the thing. I mean,
yeah.
If you're looking at the you go back to the Obama statement. If they're going to steal 7 million votes, you got to get 8.
Right.
You look at the turnout. The turnout, massive.
Insane. So what's scary is that Trump has now received the second most votes of any presidential candidate in history, just below Biden.
Right. Just below
and
Biden.
So, so you got a lot of people, Democrats are shocked at the number of votes for Trump, but, and there still was, I'm very, very concerned that people, if it looks like Biden will take it, I can tell you all the dangerous things that could prevent it and what Trump is up to and explain the dangers here. But also, we have to talk about how there was success for Biden for example, in Georgia, which the Democratic Party really had written off. I'm telling you that right now, because they didn't understand what's going on. I began in Georgia in 2014, and when Martin Luther King III told me, he said, Greg, Georgia is a blue state. They just won't let us vote. Let us vote, and it's a blue state.
Right.
And that's when I began my investigations and got the inside documents on the purges, that is, the removal of hundreds of thousands of black voters from the voter rolls, and found that they were being removed illegally. Their only crime, their crime was voting while black. And I was stuck with this for 7 years, this Georgia investigation. I've done a few other things in my life, but I keep going back to Georgia, and I'm not done. I'll be there for the Senate runoff. But one of the things we learned from Stacey Abrams, from Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter out of Atlanta, from all the groups there, the Democratic Party had the view that if you tell people that your vote's in danger, that there's vote suppression, that it will discourage people from voting. And what Stacey Abrams and the Georgians themselves proved, that's baloney. That's nonsense. That, in fact, it's the opposite. When you tell people that some mother is taking your vote away, it gets people angry, and they vote. Look at what happened with Stacey Abrams. They had to steal 340,134 votes were stolen in the Stacey Abrams-Brian Kemp race. He didn't take any chances. He was Secretary of State, so he wiped out the voter rolls and eliminated voters he didn't like. Now, here's the deal. And by the way, they suspiciously of a certain color. Now, here's the deal. He couldn't have won unless he did it. So you have a position where the politicians picking the voters instead of the voters picking the politicians. But Stacey Abrams made it an issue, and she almost overcame that third of a million vote thumb on the scale. It was quite astonishing. And people, instead of being discouraged, got whipped up and said, even the Democratic Party said, well, we tried, so forget it. The activists said, no. I was down in Atlanta in 2018 where I saw signs that said, this precinct is 100% voted all over Atlanta. They didn't care what it took to get their votes and to restore their vote. And, it was a hell of a campaign. I'm not there for Biden or Ossoff or anyone else, but
Right.
I was there to try to expose and help people who lost their vote get their vote. So, for example, I worked with the ACLU, and we identified 198,000 wrongly removed voters. And then Black Voters Matter sent 98,000 of those voters, big colorful postcards saying, you don't know it, but you've lost your vote, re-register here. And thousands responded. In addition, I want to thank Leonardo DiCaprio and his family for hosting a film that we did about purges mainly in Georgia, but also Wisconsin and Michigan, but we're focusing on Georgia. And we had a click-through, re-register. You know that we had 7 million people watch that film?
Wow.
And the word of the film, we got, are you ready? 800 million impressions. If anyone hasn't seen it, please do. It's go to gregpalast.com. You'll see the film. It's 14 minutes, The Purge. You'll learn a lot. But I got to tell you, it activated thousands and thousands of people to register. That was the key, because at the end of especially the end of one of the films, the link that got you to re-register in Georgia. Now, again, it's about telling people your vote's at risk and how you can basically steal back your vote, take back your vote, bust the burglary. And I think there's a tremendous lesson in that for the Democratic Party. Stop sticking your head in the sand about racial vote suppression. Start defending these voters. Hillary Clinton had this omerta about vote suppression. Don't mention it, it'll discourage people. And the problem was, it ain't President Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, see, that makes on no level any sense to me. That you would tell somebody
idea.
On any level that it would make any sense that someone is stealing from you, but don't tell them because they won't do anything about it. That makes literally no sense. It's impossible for me to understand the rationale that goes into that. Is there any way you can come anywhere near justifying what the frame of mind of you're being robbed, you're being stolen, you're being oppressed, you're being all of these things, but if I tell you, you're just going to do nothing about it?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to be straight. I got hell from the Democratic officials in Michigan when we published the list of 313,000 people who were shafted out of their vote and removed from the voter rolls by the Republican predecessors. The Secretary of State. So in 2018, the Democrats took over the Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Governor's office in Michigan. So, I thought, well, this is an opportunity. Let's put these people back on the rolls. And instead, don't tell anyone. I said, well, wait a minute. It discourages people from voting. Well, getting your registration canceled is kind of discouraging, too. So, but we insisted on going ahead and publicizing this, and, and we got a tremendous reaction, tremendous people. And in Michigan, we were able to tell people you can register on Election Day, but you have to know your right to do that, and you have to bring all the correct ID. It's not most people don't walk around with proof of their address in their pocket. And, you don't want to end up waiting. That's the thing. You don't want to end up waiting 4 hours in line told that you can't vote here, or you get one of these cockamamie placebo ballots that they call the provisional ballots. Right now they're going through them in Georgia and Pennsylvania.
Right.
People, legitimate voters who are handed a provisional ballot, 925,000 of these ballots in 2016 were thrown in the garbage. That's the official U.S. count of rejected provisional ballots. We didn't have 925,000 illegal, fraudulent voters in the United States. So why aren't we counting their ballots? Because some schmo says this is not a legal voter. and yet no one was arrested. If those are illegal votes, they should arrest people. If they're legal, they should have counted them. But see, this is the problem. We don't have the Democrats talking about what you do when they try to give you a provisional ballot, which is to say no.
Right.
I want a ballot. You go to that elections judge. So now we're going to see in Georgia. So now the Democratic Party has been shocked by Democrats winning in Georgia. And we will see. But I'm very worried, of course, that I am worried that there are some gamuts that Trump can still pull off to thwart the voters.
So I was going to ask you about, because, Alito made his ruling, was the voice of the ruling today that they're still going to keep counting the ballots in Pennsylvania. And I guess they're going to segregate the ones that were received after Tuesday, but postmarked on the 3rd. And there's still part of me that goes, there's still wiggle room in that for the Supreme Court to go, well, yeah, we counted them, but we're now going to set them aside because they were received after. I still see, if it comes to the U.S. Supreme Court, nothing good can come of that.
Nothing good. Here's the deal. This is deja vu all over again from Florida. When Alito said, I saw, MSDNC, they're out there, say, oh, Alito just slammed them down. No, he didn't.
No,
he didn't. He said you count the votes because you can't throw out votes if you haven't counted. You count the votes, but you must segregate them. Why would you segregate them except for the purpose of saying they cannot be added to the tally? And that's what happened in Florida. We had the Brooks Brothers riot, and then the next day, Catherine Harris, Cruella de Vil, who was, it's Republican Secretary of State. She was also the head of the Bush campaign for president while she's Secretary of State, and she says, that's it, no more counting. She stopped the count. The Florida Supreme Court, by the way, said you can't do that. The Florida Supreme Court said you got to count all the votes. They left 178,000 ballots uncounted, 178,000 ballots, and they were centered in Jacksonville, an all-African-American city virtually, and some in Miami, which is mostly in general elections Democratic. It was look, if you counted the vote, Al Gore won. The pollsters should have never apologized. They were correct. Al Gore won. The polls were not wrong if you counted those votes. So she said, no vote, don't count the votes. The Florida Supreme Court said, you have to count the votes. So the Florida legislature said, no, we're passing a law. People don't know this history. The Florida legislature passed a law saying that only the Bush electors could be sent to the Electoral College. Only the Bush electors, because they're cutting off the vote on that date chosen by Harris. That's what the legislature did. And then the U.S. Supreme Court overruled the Florida Supreme Court saying, hey, read the second Article 2 of the Constitution. The electors are not chosen by voters. They're chosen by the legislature.
Right.
There is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says that the voters choose the president. It says very clearly, unquestionably, that it's up to the legislature. And the Pennsylvania legislature this time has said, don't count those votes.
Right.
So I think it's really bad, unless, of course, it's not clear, by the way, that if you throw those votes out, that Biden may still be ahead. So it may be a Pyrrhic victory for these guys. And if the Supreme Court finds out after the count is over that it won't make any difference, make a ruling to give Trump Pennsylvania, if he's still going to lose the presidency, or even lose Pennsylvania, they'll just consider it moot and not touch it.
Yeah,
that's what we can hope for.
No, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that Nevada and Arizona come through, so Pennsylvania doesn't matter and Georgia doesn't matter. It's just icing. It's nice icing on the top. Do you see any other paths other than what we've laid out?
Well, I'm very concerned. I think the most dangerous is Pennsylvania. But the truth is that if at this moment it doesn't look like Biden needs Pennsylvania.
No.
But Pennsylvania, unfortunately, the GOP has a real strong, a crowbar to get it into the Supreme Court, and that's real bad news. Also, I've been reading Amy Covid Barrett's, legal papers, et cetera, to get a sense of this lady, and however bad you think it is, it's worse.
Yeah.
Geez, real bad news. So we're not. If it goes to the court, you don't want that.
No.
But there's no. I don't see if Biden wins Arizona, it's definitely over because the Arizona Republicans are nervous about challenging their own voters. Remember, you're asking Republicans to say, "Screw you, voters of our state. We are not going to send electors." So just understand what their gambit is. They've gone to Pennsylvania. They've gone to Nevada. They're trying to get the Republican legislators and Georgia. They're going to try to get Republican legislators to say there's so much fraud. The process was so bad, right? Trump's claim that there could be no observers within 100 feet of the poll. This is like nonsense. They're going to claim that the process was so flawed that they will not, unlike Florida of 2000 where they picked the Bush elector, I think that the gambit now is to say no electors. We're not going to certify the vote. There's too many ballots from Mars. Remember Donnie Trump, little Donnie said the mail-in ballots could have come from Mars, and I checked. Mars does not sell postage stamps. It couldn't have come from Mars. So, they're going to say it's too many fraudulent ballots, too many ballots we can't count, too many ballots in question, too many ballots that were really late or not from, trucked in from California, whatever. And so we're not certifying. Biden doesn't get his 270, but neither then, Rick, does Trump.
Right.
So what happened? Then it becomes a 12th Amendment election, goes to the House of Representatives, not up to Pelosi.
Right.
It's one vote for one state.
And Trump talked
California.
about this.
Yeah, so that is the gamut, to try to get the legislatures to say this voting was so messed up, so fraudulent, that we can't certify for our state. And just pull Biden under 269 and let it go to the House. But it looks like they're going to have to get like 3 or 4 legislatures to do that, and that's a heavy lift politically.
That is a much heavier lift. You're absolutely right, which is why, as I've said, if he gets Nevada, he gets Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia are just icing on the top, and then
That's right.
the bad stuff happens. But, Greg, I appreciate the time, the insight, all of the work that you do. I hope people will check out your website, gregpalast.com, and follow along, because Georgia is front and center for the next couple of months as well. We'd love to have you back soon.
And I'll report from Georgia for you, too.
Fabulous. Good stuff, Greg. I appreciate it, man. Our good friend Greg Palast. Make sure you check out his work, gregpalast.com, the website. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1982. That was the day that 11 women graduated from the New York City Fire Academy. They were the first women firefighters ever to serve in the city of New York since the department was founded in 1865. The inclusion of women firefighters did not come easily in New York. In 1977, for the first time, women were allowed to apply to be firefighters. Although many women had passed the written part of the exam, they were continually denied employment because they failed the physical test. The women sued citing discrimination. One of the leaders of the suit was applicant Brenda Berman. The federal district court in Brooklyn sided with the women. Not everyone was happy about the decision. A group of demonstrators came to City Hall before the graduation with signs reading, quote, "I want to be saved by firemen." The Uniformed Firefighters Association also challenged the ruling. They tried to block the ceremony in the courts, arguing that training requirements had been changed to accommodate the women. Despite the legal challenges, the ceremony went on as scheduled. In his speech, Mayor Ed Koch said, quote, "As all of us have known all along, bravery and valor know no sex." After the graduation, the controversy over women firefighters continued. The women often faced sexual harassment on the job and vilification on the editorial pages of the city's newspapers. Bumper stickers reading, quote, "Don't send a girl to do a man's job," could be seen on the car bumpers of many male firefighters and at the city's firehouses. The women firefighters stood up to the harassment, testifying before the city council and holding street demonstrations to bring awareness to the discrimination.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Georgia. Oh, yeah, Georgia. Runoff in two Senate races. So we're going to be talking about Georgia, well, ad nauseum for the next couple of months until January, where everything, the entire country is focused on what happens in the state of Georgia. And as Greg Palast pointed out, Georgia's a blue state. If you let people vote, if you let all of the people in the state of Georgia vote, Georgia is a blue state. Hands down, unquestioningly, not any arguing. Or maybe there is. Here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Georgia, I've asked my good friend, the dreaded community organizer, Eric Robertson. Eric, for the many on Twitter, for you, those who follow along, to come talk with us. Eric, thanks for taking time for us.
What is up, Rick? Long time no talk.
How have you been, man? What is going on in your backyard?
Man, woo! I tell you, I've been last 2 days. I've been out with our incredible union, Unite Here. Local 23 has organized these their members and a bunch of other people to go out and help to cure these provisional ballots that had been rejected, or if they were absentee ballots that had been rejected. There's this like curing period. So we've and I've been working with Unite Here, but there's been, I think hundreds and hundreds of people out all over the state trying to get these folks the things they need to make sure that their vote gets counted. And it's just been this Herculean effort, and it's just been amazing. We've been you could see the organizers actually crisscrossing each other in the different areas. In the area I was in, 3 cars of organizers from different organizations crisscrossing areas, talking to voters today. And we finished up at 5 o'clock today. So I don't know how many we got. I know a lot of people did a lot of work, though. It was really incredible.
Yeah. Now, the fact that it's looking like Georgia's going to go to Biden, really impressive, given the fact, as Greg Palast has pointed out to us a number of times, you've had hundreds of thousands of voters booted from the rolls. But it looks like in some of the memes I've been seeing on Twitter that, John Lewis, reached down from the heavens and pulled this to Biden's side because it was his former county that looks like tipped the scales towards Joe Biden.
Well, that's true, but there's I think you have to give the credit where it's really out there is, there's just this crew of people like Stacey Abrams, but also just all these different organizations out there that it's been doing just incredible grassroots work for the last few years, especially since 2018, though, to make sure that people had their votes counted this year. And so we went into this knowing there was going to be a big fight, and Stacey really did a lot of work to prepare people for that fight, So it was just a really with dealing with COVID in the midst of all this, it was just incredible the amount of effort and organizing that went into this.
No, well, evidently the amount of work just doubled starting today.
Yeah.
Because you don't have just one runoff Senate race, you have 2 runoff Senate races, and just to make it even a little bit more Herculean leap, a little bit more pressure on you, a little bit more attention, if you will. The fate of the nation depends on you winning both of them.
Bring it, baby. We are going to kill it. Georgia is going to flip the Senate. Watch. Just watch. Raphael Warnock is going to get up there, and he is going to do some great things in the Senate. Raphael Warnock is amazing.
Right. No, I've seen him speak, and Ossoff isn't bad either. I mean, the fact that Purdue ran off with his tail between his legs and refused to debate again after getting his hat handed to him is another thing. But here I keep coming back to, as Greg has pointed out, that there's all of these obstacles that they keep putting in the way of people getting out to vote, and look, this is going to be one of those moments where a lot of attention, a lot of energy. Got to get people out, right?
Yeah, no, the work, like you said, the work's doubled. It's, I think one of the advantages you get in a runoff is that you've been able to ID voters already from the election. So you really do know who's going to vote, or who's almost, completely likely to vote. But then you also, we have this, this old curse, Democratic curse of, just not turning out in runoffs. And so that's what I feel like this is really the first test of this really, I don't know, what would you call it, deep organizing around voter engagement up against, like you're saying, voter suppression, and up against the sort of just voter fatigue from having to go out there and vote again. I mean, we've had so many elections in Georgia this year already, from the postponed elections from COVID, and the presidential primary, and then so people are ready to be done.
Right.
So
no, because I was going to ask you about that, because I've been doing some voter outreach stuff, and people are just ready for it to stop. Just please let the pain stop. And now you're going to get Georgia, like it or not. If you're a Georgia voter, sorry, but you're going to get hammered for the next 2 months until this is because all of the attention of the country is on which way the country goes. All of the attention of the moneyed class are going to be pouring money into your state, because if the Senate goes to the Democrats, a lot of the tax breaks, a lot of the sweetheart deals that came under the Trump administration for corporate America could go away. So there's a lot of heavy interest going on in your little state there, and you got people like Gingrich saying, "Oh, they're all corrupt. Atlanta, it's all corrupt machine." So are you part of the corrupt machine?
Absolutely, 100%. I am part of the corrupt machine. Yeah, Big Us, part of Big Us. It is like you heard you earlier on talking about just watching the Republicans lose their mind. And it's like I said on Twitter last night that the American people are living rent-free in Donald Trump's head right now, because and you can really extend that to the Republicans in general. They cannot compute that they have lost this election. And I mean, you really see, I don't know if you saw the press conference that the GOP did today in Georgia, where they were alleging corruption. They had Vernon Jones getting up there talking about corruption and all this stuff. But you listen to them, and it's so vapid and empty, and it's just like one big long innuendo. There's not one single substantive accusation in the whole thing, and you can only get so far with that.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, the reality is not only did Donald Trump lose by 3 million votes, he lost by 4 million, and we're still counting. And that's the thing. They're still counting. I think that there's been a certain advantage to how the votes have rolled out, because it's made it very difficult for them to just make stuff up even that's right.
happening. So they've it's just been sort of creeping up on them, and so they had a couple hundred of their MAGA chuds go down to where the board was counting in Fulton County the other night, and it's like 100 guys out there, and it just seems like they really aren't convincing people that there is an actual, something bad going on. People really don't believe it. It's very forced.
No, and because they've been here in Pennsylvania, they've tried to be as transparent as possible. I mean, I can sit and I can watch the count, from Philadelphia on my computer. There's a video feed right there. I
mean, we're going to get certified. The election in Georgia is going to be certified by a guy who we were having protests demanding the votes be counted. In the 2018 election, the guy who's there's a Republican who was, won that election is certifying this election. So for these people to be out there raising Cain, I mean,
yeah, he's your guy. Yeah, but I guess the question I have is,
it puts them in some weird spot, you
Yeah.
know. And I mean, so like you saw Sonny Perdue out there today and Vernon Jones, and they were like, we're going to make sure that they're sort of setting it up so that they can go out there and like really beat their chest, but really say nothing, and then be like, okay, we did our thing. Everybody's happy that we did our thing, but we really know this is going to be just a show, you know.
Yeah. Now, for me, the worst case scenario is you split Georgia. You go through all this, and you split them because I guess Loeffler's really not very popular there. And I guess Purdue's not really.
Purdue isn't popular. Purdue's an empty suit. I mean, Purdue's this rich guy, you know. I mean, he's really not popular. Nobody likes that guy. He's this opulent corporate, you know. Just, I mean, he's a horrible guy. You know, like he's a horrible human. Like,
well, come on, this is the woman who during the beginning of the pandemic went and we need to dump a bunch of stuff.
No. I'm not saying she's not a horrible human being too. I'm just saying this guy is like a ghoul, and she's like this, like, yeah, she's like learning. She was like this, you know, person who nobody really, like, she was, you know, over the WNBA stuff, and it was like she got elected as a Republican, and all of a sudden, you know, was talking about how she was going to be, you know, Isaacson Republican, you know, like a real implying that she's going to be a moderate. And then, like, you know, runs all these crazy ads saying she's going to be to the right of Attila the Hun.
Yeah, do more of that
in the election.
Do more of that.
I mean, it's like you're just, yeah. I mean, yeah, she should run as hard to the right as she wants, you know, and
maybe she could take some lessons from the guy who ran for governor here in Pennsylvania last time around, Scott Wagner, who said that he was going to get out his golf spikes and stomp the governor in the face with his golf spikes. I'm like, golf spikes! And you go, dude, relax.
Man, have you started, you know, we got our QAnon Marjorie up there in North Georgia that just won. You got the Taylor Greene, the Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yep.
She's
yeah, in fact, you know, the guy, this Scott Wagner, I gotta play the audio. Here's the guy.
Spikes?
I gotta play this. Here's the guy who ran for governor as a Republican here last time. Former Senator Scott Wagner, talking about golf spikes.
Well, Governor Wolf, let me tell you, between now and November 6th, you better put a catcher's mask on your face, because I'm going to stomp all over your face with golf spikes, because I'm going to win this for the state of Pennsylvania, and we're throwing you out of office because, you know what, I'm sick and tired of your negative ads.
I got to be honest. Do more of that, please.
Yeah. Double down. No, I'm in favor of it.
And I don't know why that guy wasn't arrested, because that's a threat, isn't it?
It is a total threat, terroristic at least. But yeah, no, I mean, so like we've got all that going on too. So Georgia's just like jumping.
Well, like they say, interesting times.
You should come back down here and bring the show down here, man, because it's gonna be some fun.
No, I would love to do that. We gotta find the sponsor.
Some more barbecue.
Well, see, I still talk about our civil rights tour, 2015. For those who remember, we play the shows often. We traveled down throughout all the southern states, and we stopped in Atlanta and had some of the best barbecue along the ride in Atlanta with you, and you were very gracious and very very good host, and got some really incredible interviews out of our time there. And yes, if we do it again, most certainly coming right through your neck of the woods.
Anytime.
So last line of questioning I've got for you, in looking at what's coming, how much do you think that voter fatigue is going to play into this? Because I remember 2011, Wisconsin went through kind of the same thing. They were the focus of the country, and the message that I got from people who then turned everything off. They were unreachable, untouchable. They just stop. Do you fear that to be a problem? Fear that's going to happen now, or do you think that people, in your state who have been marginalized, do you think those people who got kicked off the rolls, do you think this is their moment to rise?
I think this is the moment. Honestly, I really do. I don't think that people. I mean, I do think people are tired, but it's sort of there's But there's a lot of people who are physically tired, but they're spiritually driven, and so they're, people are really, this state needs to change. There's people's lives that are depending on it. And I think that, our enemies, the people who want to do all these horrible things and pass all these horrible laws, they're tired too, and we're going to be less tired than they are at the end of the day.
Yeah. Ultimately, from this point forward, it's all about the Georgia.
Absolutely. It's always all about Georgia, baby.
All right. There you go. You're going to be at some point, hopefully, going to be the new. Well, no, I'm not going there. Eric, I appreciate the time, man. It's always great. Don't stay away this long next time.
I won't. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thank you. Our good friend Eric Robertson, the dreaded community organizer. No, look, I'm looking at these next couple of months, and I feel for the folks there. But now is the time to suck that up. Because you're going to get the constant text messages, the constant phone calls, the constant emails, the constant, flyers in the mail. This is politics of the time. This is the way that things have to be done. And I know it's people are tired. The old retail politic of the past. This is the brave new world. And what's amazing to me is someone who has, I've done a little bit of this work of trying to reach out to people, that I'm hoping the frame of mind changes at some point. I'm not, I made a couple hundred phone calls a day for a couple of weeks, and the number of people who are like, take me off your list. You're bothering me. I don't want anything to do with you. And I'm going, I think you have the wrong frame of mind. This is asking you to participate. This is asking you to be part of your country. This should be your patriotic duty. And the quickest way to get me to stop is to, vote. Is to make sure that you're part of the solution and not just throwing a tantrum for tantrum's sake. And this is, you texted me. Okay, well, I get 100 texts a day from different organizations. Somehow you signed up for this. And there's an easy way to opt out of it without being angry. We're such an angry society. Calm down. Relax. It's going to be okay. So, good folks of Georgia, you got a lot coming your way. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, going to Kentucky to see what's the matter with Kentucky. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1860. That was the day that Abraham Lincoln was elected 16th President of the United States. When Lincoln came to office, the nation was deeply divided on the question of slavery. By December 20th, South Carolina had seceded from the United States. Less than a month later, Confederate soldiers fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. With those shots, it became clear the issue of slavery would be settled by a civil war. The first year of the war was not going well for the Union. In December 1861, President Lincoln sat down to pen his annual message to Congress. In 1934, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt renamed that annual message the State of the Union. The speech still goes by that name today. By all accounts, the State of the Union was very grim in 1861. 11 states had seceded and were at war with the Union. Lincoln's long message to Congress included a summary of the war as well as foreign relations. But it ended with Lincoln's thoughts about the nature of work and labor in the United States. It included some of the most famous words ever uttered by a sitting president about labor. Lincoln wrote, "Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could have never existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration." Lincoln ended his address by noting that the war that embroiled the nation would have a profound impact, not just on the current generation fighting. He wrote that the conflict would shape the vast future of the nation. Lincoln was felled by an assassin's bullet. He did not live to see that vast future after the Civil War. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
There's a mournful Peggy Lee song that asks the existential question, is that all there is? Some progressives are asking that when looking at whether to vote this year, Biden or Trump. Is that all there is? No, just scroll down the ballot in most voting districts and you'll find a choice of solid progressive contenders in congressional, state, and local races for grassroots offices. But wait, scroll a bit lower and you're likely to discover a process of direct democracy, allowing ordinary people, you and me, to make our own policies and laws, rather than hoping that legislators and lobbyists will do right by us. These are ballot initiatives, policy ideas and procedural changes that are put directly to voters in a state, county, or city. Most are put on the ballot by groups that get enough voters to sign petitions demanding that a particular proposal be listed. It's not an easy process, but it has become a more common legislative tool, as shown by the number and variety of propositions on Tuesday's ballots. Just counting statewide initiatives, voters in 32 states will be making their will known on 120 ideas. They include such solidly progressive actions as Arizona's proposal to raise taxes slightly on the super-rich to cover an overdue raise in pay for school teachers. They also include such blatantly regressive schemes as the attempt in California by Uber, Lyft, and other gig giants to strip health care from their low-wage workers. This is Jim Hightower saying, especially prominent in this year of pandemic disease, mass job losses, and ever-spreading inequality, are citizen initiatives to start restoring worker rights and income. These illustrate the importance of direct ballot lawmaking. When public officials and corporate hierarchies snub people's needs or carelessly harm them, the initiative is a democratic path for asserting the people's will.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been interesting watching the right-wing groups, all well-funded, well-organized, with their corporate-made signs out there saying, "Stop the cheat! Biden lost." Yeah, well, he lost on Tuesday because no one voted on Tuesday. They voted earlier. They sent their ballots in, and we count all of the ballots. And you knew that was going to happen. And this is the only hope, as I said from the beginning, it was the only hope Trump was going to have, is if he didn't count the ballots. And here they are, with their signs, with their Alex Jones wannabes, and well, that nitwit as well. Just interesting times. But I'll tell you, the most depressing part of this entire election cycle, and for all the polling that was wrong, and for all of the conversation, I keep coming back to Kentucky. I mean, I look at someone like Mitch McConnell, who's been the single guy who's held up the stimulus, who's held up any progress, has held the country hostage for his own gain. How is it the good folks of Kentucky keep going back and putting him in office? And here to share some thoughts on what's the matter with Kentucky, I've asked our good friend, the blue-collar writer, Matt Alley, to come talk with us. Matt, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, how are you doing tonight, brother?
I am good. I'm better, to be honest with you. It looks like we're coming somewhere to the end of this. I think Biden's going to very soon be announcing he's the guy and start moving forward and doing all the things we need to do. But the sad reality is, even at the end of the day, we're still a very divided country, and we still have the same the same massive gulf between the sides that I don't know how we bring back together.
Exactly. Well, let me start off by saying apologies from Kentucky. Some of us tried, okay? And I'm here to offer observations and not solutions, pretty much. This has been the same problem we've always had, and until I think people truly wake up and realize that the flood waters are above their nose and their nostrils are not just sticking out, that's when it's going to change. So.
No, and as I've been saying since Tuesday, I've been spending some time on a picket line with workers who went on strike on Tuesday, on Wednesday morning. On Tuesday they had to vote, and Wednesday, they went on strike. And I've been there a lot talking to the people who were on strike. And I tweeted out on Wednesday. I said, look, I don't care who these people voted for. I don't care what their political ideology is. They are fighting the right battle. I stand with them, and you should too. And for me, this is where we have to start doing this. If we're going to reach people, if we're going to reach the Trump supporters, or we're going to reach the people who aren't coming around to this, this is how you do that. You have to engage people. You have to find that common ground. And for me, it starts on the picket line.
Exactly. I think that one thing that's been very positive during this election cycle is that I have seen more certain demographics engaged than they've ever have been before. There's always just been there's been very different Democrats within states. It was Kentucky, and labor hasn't always been a unifying factor.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen that, in Pennsylvania, also in other states. And it's finally, if I can do a comparison, it's sad to refer to it like this, but I felt like we're at the sophomore stage, if that makes sense. And hopefully we're going to keep growing and realizing that socioeconomics has a lot to do with everything, as you know.
No, for me, I talk about this all the time, and some of the folks I've been talking to on the picket line, there are people saying, we talk too much about race, we talk too much about sex, we talk too much about, all of the things that divide us. We're most certainly, sliced and diced and pitted against one another. And honestly, for the most of the people I talk to, the only color that really matters is green. And I've been saying that for forever, because if you're broke, it doesn't matter what color you're broke.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
But for me, it comes back to how do we then close this massive income inequality gap, because everybody's struggling. You talk to some of these Trump supporters who are the most ardent supporters of Donald Trump because they think they're all going to be like him. They're struggling. They're on the treadmill, like the hamster wheel, the treadmill like everybody else, and they're worried about losing their health care. They're worried about losing their job. They're worried about losing their house as much as everybody else is.
It's very true. And I mean, we are looking also, I'm always referring to my generation, Gen X. I don't think many of them realize what our parents' generation had. There was things like retirement and things like that I don't know if they truly realize the cost of these things. You can take someone who has worked for 20 years, has got a 401k, and when I talk to them, I'm like, okay, you have X amount in there, and that breaks down to about $1,000. There's a year or $1,500 because of what they're allowed to put into it. And I'm like, there's no way you're going to live off this. In many of these areas, I know people have never seen $15, $16 an hour, but if you don't, you have to factor in cost of living. You have to factor in things like that, and like I said, retirement. And I don't really think people of my generation have quite realized how much it costs to live once you have nothing coming in, and that's one of the biggest problems I have when I'm trying to talk to Gen X voters.
Yeah. No, my daughter's figuring that out. She turned 18 a couple of months ago, and she's ready to test her wings. She wants to start. Hey, I want to go out and move out on my own. I want to be independent. And that's great, because what that tells me is my wife and I have done our job to prepare her to move on to the next phase in her life. I would hope she would stay a little longer, and she's going to have to, because as you've said, it's expensive, it's hard, and it's this awakening that, she's working really hard, and I give her credit that, she's got good work ethic. But the jobs just don't pay. At the end of the day, you
Right.
can work 16 hours a day and still not be able to make a living.
Exactly. It's like some of these communities that Amazon's in now. If you are having to split the rent with 7 other people, are you really making it? You know what I mean? And we're seeing this in some of these places where, I don't know, workers think they're going to move off to the big city, they're going to make money, and they get there and realize that the cost of living is just outrageous. And the American dream is far out of reach, let's say.
So how do you change that? I mean, at the end of the day, I love the way you framed it. I don't think we understand enough of what our parents' generation had, and we certainly don't know how hard their parents' generation worked for them to get it. And I know it sounds like we're bashing the baby boomers, and
Right.
maybe we are. But I think back to my grandparents' generation, they fought these bloody battles on the work, obviously in World War II, and came home and did basically the same thing in the workplace to be able to build what was the most prosperous working class in history, and create what we think of as the American dream on one income. Nowadays, that's damn near unthinkable.
Right. Well, if there's one bright spot in everything that I have been talking to younger people that are in that demo of, let's say, 35 and below, they get it. They give me a lot of hope because they're out there, they're struggling. They understand that there's no rights at work. Everything's that, you get what you get when you're an at-will employee. And even with an education, you're already in the hole, you're paying college loans, etc. And there's no way to get above this. But one good thing that I have seen, one wonderful thing I should say, they understand the importance of unions already. That I believe skipped the generation.
Yeah.
That for whatever reason was not passed on. The Gen X was the first to go to college.
Right.
I was the first one in my family to do it.
Well, we were told, Matt, that if you didn't go to college, you wouldn't be able
Right.
to get into the middle class. You wouldn't be able to live that
Right.
American dream. And you had parents. I'm talking broad generalizations here. Most parents didn't want their kids, and I don't want my kids, working for a trucking company, throwing boxes at 3:00 in the morning, loading trailers or driving trucks. I want them to be better than me. And I think parents, by us wanting our kids to be better, diminish the work that we do and the value of the work that we do.
And yes, and purely by accident. And I agree with that because I know. That was preached to me, but I'm also afraid that it left the generation thinking they had more in common with being a boss at one point than it did taking pride in being a worker. And because I know that there were so many times, I'm sure you've experienced it too, when you've been out there trying to draw support for a strike line or something like that, or an organizing drive, where you just couldn't get a certain group of people out there because they were identified with, well, maybe they're going to be a boss one day. And that's something I see in the future generation, or this next generation. They can see that they already get it. They understand that they have more in common with their coworkers than they ever will with that boss. And I'm not dumping on bosses here or management, but I'm just saying about worker solidarity.
Right. No, at the end of the day, it comes down to the classic question of which side are you on?
Exactly. Now, how do we change things? I think that the more, again, if there's any hope in this election, if there's any hope in the people I've been talking to that I've gathered, it is been the next generation, the ones that are already out there doing that, the 20-somethings, the early 30-somethings, they already get it. And I'm, to be quite honest with you, I wish they were already in charge.
Yeah, me too. To a degree.
Right, with some experience still to be gathered, yes.
I'm looking at the future though, and do you feel hope? Do you feel that? Because I know we put a lot of hope, a lot of faith in what what we're seeing right now. I guess do you have great hope for the future?
A lot of hope, I really do. I mean, but it's going to take time. We're not talking about something that's easily done overnight. I mean, we're talking at least 10 years here. And I believe that their engagement, if they stay engaged, that they have an ability to reach out that perhaps hasn't been done before, and connect with one another, whether it be the rural or urban areas. I think it's going to be done.
Yeah.
And plus, I mean, there's a certain point where those that have been the blinded, let's call them, they're not going to be around forever, So.
Yeah, because I find, and this we've been having some of the conversations internally with my Teamster union, and some of the people that we're talking to is there are a lot of people who don't have any attachment to what unions were or what they are. They have no idea what they are, what they do, what the limitations are, especially in the world of Trump and the massive pendulum swing of power that's gone to management side over the last 4 years, and how much more difficult it's going to be for unions to fight for those better wages, hours, and conditions. And the conversation keeps coming again. Well, how do we pull that back? How do we educate people? How do we engage them? Because the old school tactics aren't working. We need social media. We need all this stuff, and it just doesn't seem like. I'm passionate about this because I believe this is how you have freedoms. This is how you're able to do all of the other things by having income enough to support yourself and your family, and enough extra that you can then take a day off and participate. How do you see getting that engagement and changing the current membership? I mean, virtually half the labor movement voted for Trump.
Well, I mean, you and I have discussed many times before. It's something that's passed on that, for me, I mean, I grew up, I watched my dad fight for his union. And that was why I got involved, because I was taught early on that you're never going to have anything unless you have it written into a contract.
Right.
And from that, we are looking at, and as you said, I mean, 40%, 50%, we are so far removed from that first battle, the immediate struggle to get what we have now, that we have to keep hammering it down within our locals, what it means, how we got here.
And how quickly you can lose it.
Exactly.
Because
and you can't support someone, I mean, you can't vote for someone who is for right to work, repealing prevailing wage, and all these other things, and call yourself doing everything you can for your union. It's just impossible.
But here's the thing, Matt. I've talked to a number of union members, and for them, it's the guns. They're those evil Democrats are coming for my guns. And I don't want to hear that they're coming for my guns, and I can't. I'm against right to work. I'm against giving all the money to the wealthy. I'm against all of the horrible stuff that the Republicans do. But they're on the side of the guns. So I gotta go with the guns. And we've used these kind of issues to keep voters stupid for way too long, and it's on both sides of the aisle. So how do you get past that? Because viscerally, I just talked to a guy yesterday. to his core, he believes that Joe Biden is coming for his gun. Joe Biden's going to knock on his door with a bunch of jackbooted thugs, and they're going to clean out his gun cabinet.
I mean, let's look at how many times there has been Republican control of things or whatever, or Democrat control, where they have never came for their guns. They've never changed, anything to do with the abortion laws, anything like that. It's just scare tactics. Just one thing I wanted to touch on. I mean, I'm not going to pick on a certain county within my state, but per capita, via the union members and union retirees, it is insane how it keeps voting pure red every election, and a lot has to do with the fact that they have reached a certain tax bracket, and they get extremely upset about having to pay for social issues.
Right.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that could be you at any given point. If this is taken away, if your plant closes down, if this happens, wouldn't you like to have some safety net there? And when you're 2 generations into, let's say, a middle class, kind of just slightly above, and your cost of living has a lot to do with it, the fight gets forgotten and how you got there. And I believe engagement with those type of people, in those type of regions, and they're all over the United States. I know they're in Pennsylvania. I spend a lot of time there also. We need to remind people of their roots.
Absolutely. You got to have those conversations. And this is what we've come back to, that while you may not have been there to fight the battles, you've got to know that they were fought. You got to know that they were bloody. There were sacrifices made, and that you can't just trade them away or take them for granted. And this comes down to, enough education. Now, you had talked about your father, and you saw, you lived the experience of what unions were. I came to it a little bit differently. I grew up in a housing project that was really poor in Cleveland, and what I saw is the neighbor next to us got a job at Ford. For the first couple of months, he walked to the Ford plant, which was 4 miles away. Walk to, walk back. And what I saw is as a kid, right before my very eyes, their life get better. They had food at the end of the month. Wow, imagine that. The kids got a little bit better clothes. They got used bikes. They got a used car. They then moved out into the houses across the way. And their lives got immediately better. And for me, the message was very simple: union equals better life. Mm-hmm. And somehow we've got to start talking about those messages and talking about how we make sure that happens.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if there are certain regions that I have absolutely, I believe in my state, and that the heritage is still there, especially in the western half of the state, where the unions are involved within the neighborhood communities they live, and it's become part of their lives. I know, and where I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, my dad and his co-workers organized, the last union coal mine in Eastern Kentucky, and it was sort of a weird pariah type of thing that people didn't want to talk about. And no matter how much the local tried to get engaged and sponsor whatever for football or whatever, the people just tried to ignore it because they associated the union with a bad thing. Despite the fact that now my dad, who was in his 80s, is enjoying union pension and health care, and many of the people that were his age don't have anything.
And that isn't that the story that needs to be told, though? I mean, isn't that what needs to be in people's, and it sounds like you're rubbing it in, but at some point it's that cautionary tale of look, this is a way forward. The other way is, well, not.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those things where you wonder why people didn't want better for themselves. But at the same time, I mean, it depends on who they bet on in their life and what they chose.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you try to tell them that this is the path to a better life, but if they don't take it, well, look at what happens to them. And, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like, again, going back to, I mean, I've lived all over the state of Kentucky and other places, but there's a big difference in how unions are accepted, revered, and that's one of the problems that I think going forward that we've got to change is the thing about the history of the labor movement. And so many people just don't understand it, even if they've been around it or grew up in it, sadly.
No, that's an excellent point. So getting back to where we started, and we'll finish up where we started. What the hell's the matter with Kentucky? Does it ever come around, or is this one of those moments where you just write it off? Because I'll be honest with you, when you know, I had people saying, "Oh no, you got to follow this," and you know, Amy McGrath, she's gonna take out Mitch McConnell. I'm going, and I said months ago that's not going to happen. I didn't follow the race. To be honest, I didn't follow it at all, because I had written Kentucky off in my mind. There's no way that they're going to go against Mitch McConnell. And it turns out, you know, sadly, I was right. Is there any hope?
Well, I will tell you, I'm not really going to, I can't really answer that, but I can say this. One of the problems that we're going to have to get around in the state is the thing of the ease of straight ticket voting. The Trump effect, you know, you had so many voters walking in, and a vote for Trump meant circle in that little part that says Republican, and that was it. Because, I mean, what's coming up, you know, on the down ballot that happened, I mean, there was an absolute bloodbath of Democrats this time on the state level because of that straight ticket voting. The next General Assembly for the state is just, you know, I mean, I don't want to scare people, but you have lost a lot of your allies that you had that was going to be fighting for teachers' pension, state employees' pension, workers' rights, being headed up now by people that were lapdogs to Bevin, with the Koch money. Voting and elections have consequences, and I don't know if people truly realize that this time. As far as it was the future, again, I want to see straight ticket voting done away with, but that's probably not going to happen. But there's a point where Mitch McConnell's not going to be there. We have to look at how well the candidates like Charles Booker ran, that ran against Amy McGrath, and nothing against Amy. It was just his campaign showed from a urban and rural divide was being bridged in that campaign that gave me such hope. To see people in areas like Eastern Kentucky saying Black Lives Matter. This was monumental, and I really hope that Charles will be running again in the future.
Well, we will see how it plays out, but I know there's always hope, but I'm just not full of a lot of it. But Matt, I appreciate the time and the thoughts and the insight into Kentucky. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Rick.
My good friend Matt Alley, the blue collar writer, one of my favorite guys on the Twitters. Let me take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
oil industry pollutes. It has to be replaced by renewable energy over time.
The future of U.S. climate policy following the 2020 presidential election.
We could see a landfall in South Florida. It could curve up and make a strike in the Florida Panhandle.
Heads up, Florida. Destructive Hurricane Eta may be headed your way. Plus,
the climate crisis calls us to action. And yet, on November 4th, the United States officially withdrew from the Paris Agreement.
As Trump officially exits the Paris Climate Accord, U.S. states say they are still in.
I bet Joe Biden is in, too. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Our opponents do not believe in science.
I remember that guy. Is he still around? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I think we made it through to the other side. I think we know which way this presidential election is now going. So what does that mean?
I have no idea.
Great.
But we'll talk about that in a moment. First, a humanitarian disaster is unfolding in Central America. In the wake of powerful, record-breaking Hurricane Eta and its torrential rains, floods, and mudslides that have pummeled some of the poorest regions in Nicaragua and Honduras. But now, Tropical Storm Eta ain't done yet. While its long-term track is very uncertain, the storm is forecast to regain strength and could potentially target South Florida, including a possible strike on extremely vulnerable, low-lying Tampa Bay.
No, even Florida doesn't deserve that.
Yep, this is 2020, so hey, Florida, keep an eye on this one.
Yes, please.
As we go to air, the 2020 presidential election is still officially undecided, as ballots are still being counted, but it appears that former Vice President Joe Biden is on track to ultimately win the presidency. If that happens, it is potentially good news for a revival of U.S. climate and pollution policies. The Trump administration officially left the International Paris Climate Agreement on Wednesday, the only nation to do so, and Biden has pledged to rejoin it immediately. But they may extract some concessions in order to allow the U.S. back in.
Oh, I hope they do.
Progressive climate hawk candidates in down-ballot races did pretty well in a number of states, and in the U.S. Senate, 2 Democrats, former astronaut Mark Kelly in Arizona and John Hickenlooper in Colorado, defeated incumbent Republicans. But at this time, Republicans appear likely to retain control of the U.S. Senate, severely limiting any impact that a potential Biden administration could have on emissions, pollution, and clean energy.
That said, when Trump was in office, he was able to do a whole bunch without Congress helping him out to destroy the environment. So, in theory, Biden can reverse those actions to improve things almost immediately.
Well, a Republican-controlled Senate would have an effective veto over any climate legislation and pretty much prevents any chance of using the Congressional Review Act to overturn Trump's most recent environmental rollbacks. The next chance to flip the Senate and achieve meaningful climate legislation won't be for another 2 years in the 2022 midterms.
Well, I guess we'll take what we can get at this point.
But policy experts say a potential Biden administration could do a lot on climate and energy without control of the Senate through executive orders, new regulations and standards, federal agency budgets and programs, new funding for research and development, and through foreign policy.
Well, that's exactly what I was just trying to say.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Pay attention, Doyen.
However, many of those actions are likely to be challenged in the courts that Trump and Senate Republicans have packed with right-wing judges.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
But climate scientists say that delay on enacting strong U.S. climate policies is not game over for solving climate change. It just makes an already difficult task much, much harder. The scientific reality hasn't budged. Scientists with the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change still warn that we must cut global emissions in half by 2030 to have the best chance at avoiding irreversible, truly catastrophic climate outcomes. Every year of delay means we will have to increase the rate of emissions cuts to meet the 2030 target. CBS meteorologist Jeff Berardelli explains.
That's a drop of more than 7% year after year. But if the world delays bold action for another 4 years, we need to double our ambition, reducing emissions by 15% per year, a virtually impossible feat.
For this country, I would say so.
Finally, Washington State Governor Jay Inslee, whose ambitious climate policies set the gold standard during the Democratic primary and who won his re-election bid on Tuesday, released a video reassuring the international community that American states and cities are still working toward climate goals and will not quit, regardless of who is president.
We can and will do better. There is so much of the U.S. that is still in this fight with you, and soon you'll have our full commitment again in this great nation.
For much more on these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Well, the other day I said, I wonder what Lindsey Graham's going to do when he has to look at Joe Biden in the eye. And I'm still want to see that. But today, Lindsey stated the obvious. He said that Joe Biden deserves a candidate. I mean, he deserves a cabinet. Joe Biden deserves a cabinet. He goes on to add the caveats. I'll support some people, but, if they're unqualified or too extreme, I can't possibly do that. But he deserves a cabinet. The interesting thing for me is going to be watching how the Republicans then cry if they don't give Biden who he wants, and Biden decides to go, we're going to do the acting thing like Trump did. No, we're going to bypass the Senate. We're just going to continue to do acting things. I wonder how that's going to play out. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, maybe the thoughts. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, Lindsey stating the obvious, Joe Biden needs a cabinet, should get a cabinet, but not just too extreme. Do you see another 2 years of acting, secretary of this, acting secretary of that?
I don't think so in the end. I mean, they can do it in certain positions where they're not going to get, support. I just don't see the political benefit in the end of holding up, all the cabinet members. So, besides, Lindsey will come around. Look, we could do an entire show on Lindsey. I walked in Congress the same day as Lindsey when, if you wanted to find Newt, just find Lindsey. And then, of course, he turned on Newt and helped throw him out.
Right.
Then he was John McCain's best friend and said worse things about Donald Trump than Joe Biden could ever say. Then he became Donald Trump's best friend. So he might attempt to be Joe Biden's semi-decent friend.
So
you never know.
So I guess
he's an opportunist.
Right. So I guess this is where I was going. What behind does this dog's nose end up in next?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I just don't see that they're going to be able to mess with the cabinet a lot unless something happened. One of the cabinet members doesn't get vetted properly, and they've got some kind of problem. Which
that always happens.
Yeah. That happens. Somebody had a maid, they weren't paying her. They were paying her under the table. I mean, you never know what happens. But otherwise, especially Biden coming. I mean, I want to stress this. Biden came from the Senate, and so he's a creature of the Senate in a sense, and they're going to battle him, but there's going to be certain things they'll give him, some support on. So they might complain about a few things, but I just don't see a big win in messing up his cabinet.
No, I don't either. Because they ultimately gave Trump got his cabinet, but granted the Republicans had the Senate.
Right.
You ended up with some pretty ugly people in there. A bit of supporter. You want your crazy people, you get them as long as they get the vetting done. But it's going to be interesting to see how much they fight because we're heading into this moment, and I'm sure you're watching the virus numbers go up as well. And they're going to continue to expand and explode now that I think it's in an uncontrollable position right now. At some point it's going to have to be, how do we deal with this? How do we fix this? And oh, by the way, Mr. President, you're going to have to be the face and the leader of it. So they're going to have to come around a little bit. No,
they will, and they have a mutual enemy. We all do, the virus, and Biden's going to be president of the United States. and he'll have to take a leadership role on this. And some of it may not be popular, but you can only, they can only fight each other so much on a virus issue. They've got to work some common ground. There'll be plenty of other things they can, argue about. But the virus, they're going to have to work together. And there's going to be a stimulus bill. There's going to be a stimulus bill.
There's got to be. There's got to be a stimulus bill.
There will be one.
Because you had the Fed chair come out and say the economy's not going to be not going anywhere without it. We need this. And probably
McConnell didn't want to put his senators that were in precarious situations in a precarious situation of that vote.
Yeah.
Until after the election.
I keep coming back to this. The Democrats just don't play this game very well. I mean, you go back to Newt Gingrich. As much as I didn't like him, he played the game well. As much as I didn't like Tom DeLay, he kept people in line, however they had to. They do that. As much as I really don't like Mitch McConnell, he's been the most powerful guy in this country and has orchestrated all of the horrible that's happened.
Well, it's funny you mention this. I was thinking about this tonight. I can remember when they were doing tactics, the Democratic side of moving to adjourn. When you move to adjourn in the House, it is not debatable. You have to have a vote, right? So everybody's trying to meet with their constituents, and we're going over every 15 minutes to vote, and then 20 minutes later we're voting, and it's going on because they didn't like something in the first 90 days, right? And Gingrich brought in cots and things down the hallway, and he voted for 24 hours. He didn't care if you had to leave for a funeral, what you had to do. He did that, and hardball tactics. But that's what he did, and a ton of other things. And McConnell has been around a long time. Look, McConnell so far got away with saying, we got to wait till a new president comes in for a Supreme Court pick. Then this time, we're going to do it. We're not going to wait for a new president. And he had no shyness about it. So, yes, I agree with you. There are certain tactics. It's a blood sport. Certain tactics backfire, but it's a blood sport, and if you play nice all the time, you're not going to get credit for it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I know you were a Republican. You were in with the contract on America, or for America, right? Is how you guys framed it. You were in that. That was your side of it. I just think you guys played the game so much better. The messaging so much better.
Sure.
For instance, Fox News evidently is there's a memo out. I'm sure you've seen it. Fox News is telling their anchors, don't call Joe Biden president-elect. Call him anything else. The guy who's got enough electoral votes to be president. Whatever. But not have that language go out. Your discipline was so much better. The Republicans are just so much better at all of the game, and I don't know how Democrats are so bad at it.
Our messaging there was a lot of work on messaging. Now, you also, I know you realize too, certain things Newt let go. I mean, Newt actually unionized the Capitol Hill Police Force. Think about that. He unionized it. He said, yeah, unionize it, if you want to do that. And I did. I wanted it unionized. And he did that, and certain other things. Certain things he let go. He didn't touch certain things like prevailing wage, et cetera. And then he stuck after that, once he got some of those things out that would have hurt him. Now, Hastert wasn't the same way. He used to go after things like prevailing wage. But once Newt got just certain mantras down of what he wanted to do and kind of talked to the troops, then we had this serious, almost schooling, Rick. You would go on a Thursday. They would come in. They would give the messaging. You looked at it, and everybody matched each other out in the districts.
Yep.
I mean, you'd tailor make some of it, but there were mantras, I called them, that were messaged mantras, and I think that was all his doing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've given them credit for this. I've given him credit. I've given the Republican Party and the moneyed interest credit for being able to do what they've done. I mean, it's masterful. It's well thought out. It's well funded, planned. All of that. I say it all the time. Their messages are focus group tested, think tank approved.
Right.
And I just wish the Democrats would stop being so bad at this, because look, when you have competing messages, and one group is all on the same page and marching to the same tune, They look a lot more competent. They look a lot more like, hey, oh yeah, they got their act together. When you're scattered all over the map and you're in fight, that's not helpful.
Right, and I think that, I mean, I'm looking at this election. Look, Biden's going to be president of the United States.
Right.
And I'm looking at this election right now, sitting here, and I'm thinking, you know, if I was a consultant to the Democratic community, you know, in the Congress, for example, I mean, there are certain things they are going to have to be extremely careful about. I'm not talking about a piece of legislation as much as their approach, you know, to things. And now some things leaked out of the Democrat conference today, and you know, and then AOC came out and said it wasn't me, and you know, and I'm thinking, okay, just take a deep breath, everybody, right now. There's an election yet to be finished. There's going to be some legal battles. I don't see a path to the Supreme Court, but there's going to be some legal battles. And I thought this is not the time to jockey about who's going to be the new progressive for the next 2 years or who's going to be the new moderate for the next 2 years.
Right.
It's one body, and I think they need to learn that lesson like tomorrow morning.
So let me ask you the glaring question in the room then. You could be really rich if you just did that. If that was where you went, you should be that guy. Say, listen, stupid, listen to me. I know. I can help you get this done. I can right your ship. I was once there.
Right.
Because no, look, and I'm not blowing smoke up your behind, you know, because everyone knows we're friends. Everyone knows I admire you and I value your judgment. But you're usually right. It's not a matter of, you know, just because you're my buddy that I agree with you. It's that you're right.
Well, it's the same thing with you. Look, if I was a rich guy and I wanted to make a movement go, I would fund you. I would have your show in every city. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you. You're smart. You know grassroots. You just know a lot of things. And I sit here and I wonder why some people just don't get it out there. You know, and the Republican side, too. I mean, I could say the same thing. You know, where on earth are their minds sometimes?
Yeah, but in the House, it's a little different. I don't know that they have the House together like you guys did.
Right.
I don't know that there's that leader. I think McConnell's got everybody pretty much, you know, where he wants them. But you know, I'm just worried about the next couple of years because we're so divided. And I saw this story, you know, today that grabbed my attention. That, you know, basically said Wall Street's happy. Wall Street's thrilled that we're divided. Because, well, we're not going to undo all of the giveaways that they got during the Trump years. We're not going to, you know, increase the corporate taxes. We're not going to bring back the alternative minimum tax for them. We're not going to do all of the, you know, the regulations that they slashed and burned. Because, look, it has been a corporate holiday for the last 4 years, and they're thrilled because it's not going to change.
Well, on the Democratic side, and this, I seriously. For the last 2 days, I've been thinking about all of these things so much. First of all, there's two runoffs coming now.
Right.
So the Senate could be 50-50 if the Democratic side wins the two Georgia seats in January. That's paramount. Now, what's important about that is the conduct of the Democratic Party from now through that, because they have Georgia to win. They win Georgia, then they've got a 50-50, and the vice president breaks the ties, right?
Right.
So that's a big deal. So they have to really have their act together, and it's not just going to be a matter of money raising, but it's going to be a matter of, of the tone they take, but especially the agenda they set. Now, just because they didn't do well in the House, and if the Georgia seats go to the Republicans, just because they didn't do good in the Senate, which they didn't, they have to face that fact, doesn't mean that they have to hide and cower and things like that. They just have to be smart and have leadership, and they don't have to be lemmings, but they have to be together.
Right. No,
they do.
You're absolutely right. They got to get on the same page.
Put aside personalities. I call it the dog and pony show, and people be running to the speaker. I want to do this, and I want to conduct this hearing, and I want to be the top dog. And the speaker's got to put her foot down and say, we're gonna do this together. And and I know because Newt did it, and it's got to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the next year is so critical as to how all of this goes. Savor, the victory, but I mean, anybody that thinks this is going to be now automatically easy and that it was a tsunami better get their heads checked.
No.
There's a lot of work ahead.
No, and I've said, look, I'm walking a picket line from midnight to 8 a.m. Now I've moved on. How do we make people's lives better? We're, the election, I'm thinking is pretty well done. Georgia obviously going to be front and center for a while, but it's behind us. We now got to figure out how do we make sure that people don't lose their homes? How do we make sure that we grow the economy again so that workers get to participate? How do we make lives better? Because there is no honeymoon period for me here. I think Biden gets no honeymoon whatsoever because he's stepping into office at a time when I fear we're going to be losing 3,000 people each and every day to this virus because it's out of control right now. And there's nobody at the wheel in my view, and there's nobody going to stop this because every day it's another 100. It was 100,000 the other day. It was 111,000. It's 121,000. It just keeps going up and up and up until, unfortunately, as was predicted, this is going to explode and it's going to be uncontrollable.
Right.
And he gets no honeymoon.
It's right. You're right. It's paramount. And then Tammy Baldwin today, she said that how about a transportation bill? Sherrod Brown, fascinating, my Ohio congressman, definitely a progressive guy. He came out and said we need to learn how to talk more to people. He said that today.
Yep.
He didn't come out and say we need climate control. He said we need to learn how to talk more to people, how to relate to them. I think that's the approach to take. Put together something that, is a series of items where they're going to protect people and have interests and protect people's safety, and starting with the virus and also workplace safety. Infrastructure bill, stimulus package, and related out there.
No, you're absolutely right. And to Sherrod Brown's point, we have forged a relationship with this platform called ThinkSpot, and we're on we're broadcasting there right now. There are people who are there who are mostly center right to pretty far right. Because as I've been saying for a very long time, we've got to talk to people. We've got to engage people we don't agree with and get out of our silos. And if this election taught us anything, is we're siloed up. It's the rurals and the urbans, and there's literally no ground between. And if we can't figure out how people, identify with each other, I don't know where we go. Because I was telling a guy last night, I go, I'm someone who was fortunate. I'm fortunate. I grew up in a housing project in a city. I now live in a rural area, and the gun issue for me is one of these interesting things. Because when I was a kid, you saw somebody walking down the street with a gun, duck because somebody's going to die. You see someone today, they're probably going to the free gun range. It's about a mile from our house. It's a different culture. It's different ideas on what it is. And there should be different approaches on how you handle that. And be okay with there are different approaches.
Right. And, a friend in Florida today, she said every person that voted for Trump was racist. And I told her, I said, go ahead and keep it up because, statements like that, a broad brush. And I told her something. These are facts. Trump tripled the African-American vote from what John McCain got, all right? I mean, he increased the percentage of a Hispanic vote from 28% in 2016 to 32% this year. He received a bigger percentage of non-white votes than any Republican since Richard Nixon, and he received the biggest percentage of Jewish votes since Ronald Reagan. Now, the reason I mention all that, look, Joe Biden's going to be president of the United States. And we've got to get behind Joe Biden because he's going to be our president and hope he does well. But I mentioned all those things because this is a complicated piece of a puzzle of how somebody wins or loses and where groups are. These groups are up for grabs. And so it's not a matter of just who wins the election, but these groups are up for grabs. They want to hear things. And if you look at those stats, they're quite interesting of how this ended up.
No, you're absolutely right. And because the other point is, I guess to make my point from earlier, he actually talked to them and tried to address some of their issues. The fact that he was able to put his name on that crime reform bill and some of the prison reform stuff goes a long way. that you say, look, we tried, and he was hammering on the fact that the unemployment rates in those communities were the lowest ever. Whether that's true or not didn't matter. He kept saying it, he kept hammering on it. I give Trump credit for one thing. He was an incredible pitch man. He knows how to sell the woman in white gloves with the ketchup popsicle. But at the end of this, Democrats they're going to have to produce.
Because if all this happened, I mean, if Trump had just been 20% nicer, quit calling people, especially women, names, don't accuse people of killing their staffers, which he did. I mean, we could go up and down the list. Sure. This might be a different conversation tonight.
No, there's a couple of things that would be a much different conversation. But to your point, real quick to your point about the woman saying that every Trump supporters are racist. I go, no, not every Trump supporters are racist, but every racist is a Trump supporter.
Is a Trump supporter.
I mean, that's how that goes. So you're guilty by association.
That's the way to say it.
And I guess you're guilty by association. But this goes back to the point we were just making a minute ago that we got to talk to each other. We got to identify with each other, and Trump, you may not agree with how he did it, but he gave it a try, and it paid off for him. I guess he got the largest vote of black males that the Democrats have gotten in for almost ever.
Right.
And got 55% of the white female vote by saying, "I'm going to go grab her by the you-know-what."
Yeah, it's quite an amazing time in our lives. But yes, the bigger picture, everything you've talked about tonight, I mean, I agree with it. People on the Democratic side really need to look at this so carefully and communicate and reach out. It's just going to be a very, very interesting time. But you're also correct. Number one's the virus. Yeah. Number one.
But
out of the box.
Since you brought that up again, I said earlier that had Trump come out in January and said this is serious, we need to mask up, we need to do the things that was in the playbook. Can you imagine his supporters then being because whatever Trump says he was going for, so that can you imagine how well things would have worked out for us in this country if the Trump supporters were not having their tantrum about not wearing a mask, but having a tantrum against people for not wearing a mask?
Right.
We'd have kicked this back in April. We'd be done by it, and he'd have been reelected by a landslide.
Sure. Also, if he had not went out and just had to have look, why there were rallies. The rallies were to make him feel good.
Yep.
You know that. I know that.
And to make Biden look weak for not doing it.
Yeah. But had he not had even the rallies as he did, I mean, there was just so many mistakes on that. But it's a big time, serious issue.
No, I'm with you. But lots for us to talk about from this point forward. It's probably going to be Georgia from now until January.
Right. Exactly. Oh, it is. I just anybody that has a radio station in Georgia, you're going to make a lot of money.
We could have bought one and we could have cashed in.
We should still. Yes.
Damn. All righty. Well, Bob, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for taking time for us.
You too. Thanks.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former congressman, and probably one of the smartest political strategy guys I've ever met. And look, I wasn't blowing smoke up his behind. He is really, he was spot on about this. He said, look, it's going to be probably a 50-50 Senate at best. Because I said 51-49 that I thought it was going to be. He's like, no, not going to happen. He called it down to the wire. He said, this is going to go down to the wire. He was spot on. And but as he has been numerous times throughout the years, which is why we're so happy that he comes back and talks with us so often. But here we are. We should soon have a number 46 president, and like Bob said, gonna have to line up behind him. Gonna be interesting to watch if the Republicans, the Patriots, then back down a little bit, or if the volume gets a little bit louder. If we start seeing more acting out, start seeing more chaos. Because guess what? The virus is going to get worse tomorrow, and this need to be a genius to figure out. Tomorrow's going to probably break another record, and then the day after that, it's going to probably break another record, and then it's going to get down the road to the point to where, we're in the middle of cold weather. We're getting towards winter. The deaths are going to start piling up, to where we're going to have a record number of people dying tomorrow, and then a record number the next day, and the next day. And remember, this was Trump's baby. This is his legacy. Those super spreader events, it's on him. Just my view. I'd love to hear yours. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.